this is what we're dealing with, and blinded by the light.
Yep.
Just in case you didn't know, I'm Matthew.
And I am not looking forward to this episode. I don't like... I'm Brian.
And this is Road Trip Recap. Spoilers up ahead, as today we're going to be talking about the Bloody Mary episode of Supernatural.
I.e. the episode that actually gave me nightmares for the first time when I watched it. And we're going to be talking about the urban legend that inspired this episode as well.
We're not going to be talking about how to make the drink, so buckle up.
I could use one.
Right.
Yeah.
Buckle up and let's go. Our episode opens up in Toledo, Ohio, as we get, teenage girls doing their teenage girls slumber party thing, playing some Truth or Dare.
Pillow fights?
Not in this part.
Oh, okay.
We get Lily is dared to go into the bathroom, look in the mirror, and say Bloody Mary 3 times. She does, and we get our, jump scares. Her friends are just pounding at the door, just trying to scare her. Her father, Stephen, or as they call him, Mr. Shoemaker, comes in, checks on them, sees how they're doing, and then decides to, go get ready for bed. So he heads upstairs as we see more in the mirrors that he's passing than just him.
Yeah.
And then, he goes into the bathroom, and Mr. Shoemaker doesn't shoemaker it. He's discovered by his older daughter after she comes home, and then that's just kind of our cold opening of this episode. Our next scene has Sam having another dream about Jessica, and we get a little bit of a hint that he's still suffering with guilt from this, as we get her calling out to him, why Sam? And there's gonna be more to that a little bit later on in the episode, so we're getting a glimpse of this right now. Sam and Dean go to investigate this mysterious death that they've heard about, and they pose as students that are doing a paper. And again, we see a little bit of a peek behind the curtain is how they go about learning and doing what they do. So, Dean kind of looks at the name of the guy in charge and uses that to say, like, oh, well, he said that we could come in and look at the body. And it doesn't really work out for probably a number of reasons. One, like, the guy's name is really difficult to pronounce, and I'm not even going to try it. But two, the guy on duty is just like, well, we're just going to have to wait for him. So they have to bribe him with money that Dean earned by playing poker, which, you're still kind of earning it.
It's still work. You still have to learn how to,
Takes time and effort. They find out that essentially Stephen had some massive skull bleeding and his eyes exploded. Is just the basis of it. So in here we kind of learn that within the world of Supernatural, almost 100% of the time, anything strangely medical that has happened is related to something supernatural. There's just, people don't die in weird ways unless something supernatural is involved. Sam and Dean go to try to find out more of what happens. They go to talk to the family as they find the older daughter, Donna, who discovered Stephen. They're trying to poke around without being too invasive, which isn't 100% successful, but you got to do what you got to do. In the process of talking to Donna and her friend Charlie, they find out from the younger daughter Lily that she blames herself because she was the one that said Bloody Mary 3 times, and so that's what killed him. In the process of talking amongst themselves, they're trying to figure out if that could actually be the case, because that's not how the legend goes. Bloody Mary is supposed to kill the person that says her name into the mirror. It's not supposed to, kill somebody, some random passerby.
Yeah.
And so as they're trying to figure it out, we get Charlie kind of catching them, and she's onto them. They claim that they work with Donna's father, and she's like, your story is not adding up. And they're like, look, we're just trying to help. We know something weird's going on. Like, I know you know it too. If you know of anything, like, give us a call. So Sam and Dean move on to the library to try to research if there could have been a Mary that has died in front of a mirror in some way that could be the cause of this essentially like recreation of Bloody Mary. And it's a little bit harder than they had hoped, as the computers are down, so they got to go searching through hard copies and everything.
God, I hate that.
And while they're doing this, we get another scene of Charlie is talking to her friend Jill, kind of about the whole thing, and she's a little freaked out about the whole Bloody Mary thing. And, Jill's not a believer, so she's like, look, I'm going to do it right now. And so she goes to the mirror and, says the name 3 times, and then we hear a scream on the other line, followed by a laugh. I'm just pranking you. Well, the joke's on Jill. Because after she hangs up, we find that reflections don't really reflect like they're supposed to reflect anymore.
So this is the thing about this episode that gets me. Is one, I've got the whole Samara from The Ring thing where it's like creepy woman, long hair, just kind of standing there looking creepy. Like, that is enough for me to be like, no, I'm done. But then suddenly it enacts on that one fear that I have, is that I walk by a window, as I walk by like a doorway, there's something there that I don't notice, and as I go to check it, it's not there anymore. Yeah. And so this one just amplified all of the things that make me go, no.
From here, Charlie calls up Sam and Dean to let them know that Jill died, and that, she also said Bloody Mary in front of a mirror. So she helps them break into Jill's room. They're trying to figure out what's going on, and then they notice there's something on the mirror. So they grab the black light, and there's a handprint and also a name that's been spelled out. The name here is a Gary Bryman, which in Supernatural was a 9-year-old boy that was killed in a hit and run, which, the description of the car is like, well, that was Jill's car. Side note, in real life, Gary Bryman is actually a producer that has worked with Eric Kripke on a number of his films that he's worked on. So he likes to throw in nods to people that he knows.
He apparently killed him via a teenage girl.
Well, I mean, you don't want
Off-screen.
You don't want to keep them around for too long.
No, that's true.
then you end up naming a character after him, and instead
becoming
of being
a father figure.
Yeah, instead of being a one-off character, they just keep coming back, and then it gets called out in one of your more meta episodes.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother story. So from here, as they're trying to make some sort of a connection, they find out that Lily and Donna's mom, Linda, may have actually been killed by their father, Stephen.
Oh.
So now we're getting more of a hint that this version of Bloody Mary is killing secret killers. Like people that have a deep, dark secret that led to the death of somebody. That's who she's going after. In the process of doing research, Dean finds a Mary Worthington that died in front of a mirror in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Which, side note, is where I went to get this car.
Oh, really? Yeah. It just got a little more meta. Also, I'm not going to look in any of the mirrors in this car now.
Yeah. Fair enough. So Sam and Dean, they drive down to Fort Wayne, Indiana to talk to one of the detectives there to kind of find out what happened. And essentially, she was found murdered in front of a mirror, and she had appeared to try to write the name of her murderer on the mirror before she died. And they believe they know who it was. It was a surgeon she was having an affair with or something, and her eyes were cut out almost like it was by a surgeon, or weird stuff. Anyways,
basically all circumstantial evidence as to who the killer was,
sure,
but no actual hard proof as to who the killer was. Thereby, vengeful spirit time.
And of course, they can't salt and burn the body, which hasn't actually happened in the show yet.
Nope. Because
Mary Worthington was cremated.
Naturally.
But the mirror that she died in front of lives on.
Pam, would you like this murder mirror?
We get Charlie talking to Donna about the whole thing, and Donna doesn't believe. So now Donna says, "You know what?"
Yeah.
In front of the mirror 3 times, and so Charlie's a little freaked out.
Breakfast drink. And then
we get to another scene where Charlie's in class, and reflections aren't being friendly to her. She's seeing things she doesn't want to see. She's freaking out a little bit. She goes to leave class, and the teacher's like, "Charlie, what's going on?" And I bring up this teacher specifically because this teacher was played by Michael Teagan, who we see later on in season 4 as he comes back as a police officer.
Oh.
And so, in my headcanon, it's the same person, not just the same actor. It was this teacher was like, "I don't know what happened that day in that class, but I want to help people in a different way. Teaching isn't cutting it anymore. I need to physically protect people.
I'm going to be a police officer."
Yeah. But actually, the teacher does not go on to become a police officer to help people. He goes on to become a suicidal teddy bear. So that was my mistake. I need to check my sources better in the future. But
I love that episode.
So I'm kind of curious when we get to that episode to see if it lines up.
I hope it goes well for him.
Yeah. Which on the subject of reoccurring actors, Lily, the younger daughter, was played by a Genevieve Buckner, I believe, and I may be butchering that last name or the first name for all I know. She also is a reoccurring character, or not character, but actor who comes back in season 14 as Samantha Juarez. So it's season 14, episode 4, which, if you remember from our last episode, was the same episode that I believe Barbara comes back in.
I think so, yeah.
We got 2 episodes in a row. We have actors coming back in the same episode 13, 14 years later. Anyways, we cut back to Sam and Dean. They learn that the mirror that Mary died in front of was sold a week ago. So that's why these killings have just recently started up. It's kind of pointed out earlier, like, it doesn't make sense for the spirit to not be around where it died. Mm-hmm. And so this is kind of the solution to that is it's the mirror that's haunted, essentially. And the mirror was sold and is now in Toledo, Ohio. Sam also mentions that mirrors kind of have ghost trapping capabilities, I guess. And so that's, like, in the olden days, like, when people would die, they would cover up the mirrors so as to not capture spirits.
And I mean, there's still even cultures to this day that look at mirrors as a commune between, like, your soul and the world outside.
I just don't want it to communicate back to me.
No.
So now we get Charlie calling up Sam and Dean as she's freaking out because, well, you know. So their solution while they're trying to solve the problem is to cover up anything reflective. So right now I'm reminded of that Treehouse of Horror episode of The Simpsons where all the advertisements are attacking, and their solution was just don't look. Sam and Dean decide that what they need to do is summon Mary to her mirror and then smash it, and that'll solve the problem. And so Sam decides he's going to do it because he's got him a dirty little secret, is what he says. So they find where the mirror's being kept at, and as they're trying to figure out where the mirror's at, they trip the silent alarm. Security shows up, and so Dean's like, I'm gonna go take care of this, you find the mirror and smash it. And so, Dean's trying to play it cool with security. They're like, oh, who are you? And they're like, oh, I'm the boss's kid. You're Mr. Yamashiro's kid? Well, I was adopted. Meanwhile,
that was a good moment there.
Meanwhile, Sam finds the mirror, calls Mary into it, and before he gets a chance to do anything, reflections aren't reflecting again. And here we learn a little bit more on what Sam's secret is. All these dreams he's been having about Jessica, he was having those dreams before she died. And so now, like, he really blames himself because he literally could have done something to stop it, in his mind anyways, because he actually knew that something was wrong. It's not just one of those, like, bad things happen and, there was nothing you could do. Bad things happen, but I had an idea that something bad was going to happen. Like, I could have done something.
Yeah, at the same time, how was he to know that he had, like, some sort of prophetic visions at this point in time?
Which as the audience and everybody else, is fine. But
yeah,
as someone living with that survivor's guilt and everything,
that's true.
This is, just an extra hammer to beat himself over the head with.
Like you do. So Sam's not doing well, but then Dean does show up as he didn't have time to, converse with security anymore, so he just knocks him out. Dean shows up and he smashes the mirror. So problem solved, right? Everything's good. Actually, no. That plan backfired, because now she just wrings herself right out of the mirror, and she's now, like... Again, on Creep Factor, like that little coming out of the mirror kind of, like, little Samara moment.
Those things are your favorite, aren't they?
They are. Yeah, they're my favorite thing to hate.
So from here we get another bit of what I call supernatural cheating, as the if she's killing secret killers, she's been killing people secretly. So Dean just shows herself her own reflection. She's like, well, based on my own rules that I've established, I've got to go.
Based on my own logic.
So essentially, Bloody Mary was a robot.
Yeah.
And was logic out of existence.
Just put into a paradox.
Yeah. Or, like, another way I kind of refer to it, it was the Medusa effect.
Oh, yeah.
So, just kind of showing the own reflection, and that's just the way it is. From here, like, Dean's like, I want to know now, what's your secret? And he's like, you know what? No, I'm going to keep my secrets. And then, as they're leaving, Sam just kind of looks out the window, and he sees Jessica just kind of standing there, dressed in white. Is she now a woman in white? Or was this not Jessica? Was this the actress who played Jessica, as I propose, because Genevieve and Eric Kripke call Toledo, Ohio their hometown. She was just out on the street in her hometown as they were driving by. I was like, hey, I worked on that show, which works only in my headcanon where they actually go to locations to film.
But they're in Canada.
Shut up, Brian. Which, that's where I'd like to see this go at some point, is us driving to these places and be like, here's what Toledo, Ohio really looks like. Because I'm not 100% sure, but we're 5 episodes in. I think this is our first real city that Sam and Dean have gone to.
Yeah.
So that could be cool.
That could be, yeah.
But anyways, I know, like, they've established, like, this isn't, like, the legend. This is just conveniently some lady named Mary that died in front of a mirror and was just like, hey, people calling my name. So what is this legend? What?
So, I mean, I think we're all pretty familiar with what the urban legend of Bloody Mary is. When I was a kid, first going to sleepovers and everything, I heard about Bloody Mary. And the version that I heard about it...
Wait. You've heard about who?
Not going to happen.
That's just sad because you can't see the mirror in the camera.
You can't see the mirror. But the one that I heard when I was a kid was that it was based around Mary the First, who was called Bloody Mary because of her kind of coup, like her genocide against a lot of Protestants.
Okay.
But she was obsessed with trying to get a baby, obsessed with trying to have a male heir for her father, that even after, several years after he died, she was still trying to get a male heir for her father, and she ended up dying without a male heir. And so the one that I was taught was you say Bloody Mary 3 times, and then you follow it up with I killed your baby, and then Mary the First is supposed to appear holding her dead child. And it's not supposed to attack you, just scare the bejesus out of you. Now,
That would work.
Yeah. When you're a kid in a sleepover setting, yeah, it works 100% of the time. It's fantastic.
Especially if your friends knock on the door. And then the father of whoever's friend you're staying with just ends up dying.
That hasn't happened yet.
Oh, good. Good.
I hate to put the addendum there on it, but oh well. But there have been...
It hasn't happened to you yet.
It hasn't happened to me. And of course, I'm not really going to be saying that in front of a mirror thanks to this episode.
I mean, I don't know how far your research extended.
Yeah.
Has that happened ever?
You know, that in a way that has. So, like with all urban legends, urban legends potentially have like a little bit of truth to them.
Sure.
But also, it's really hard to pinpoint where it all comes down to. A lot of modern day Bloody Mary stories are tied in with a young woman who dies. Sometimes it's by a robbery. Sometimes it's by an abuse of parents. Sometimes it's by accident. But either way, there's a young woman named Mary who dies violently. And a lot of these stories will also have her eyes gouged out by said parents or said robber or said like whatever, or she falls on needle. Like there's various different ways that this woman has died. And now when you say her name, she does come to you and sometimes attacks you, strangles you, scratches your eyes, or just straight up kills you.
Right.
Is kind of how those stories go. But a lot of modern day Bloody Mary thoughts could be traced back to an old form of divination, where young women would hold a hand mirror and walk backwards up the stairs, and what they were hoping to see is a flash of their husband. And so as they're walking up the stairs, they would see a face appear in the mirror, and that would be like a glimpse of what their husband looked like. Except every once in a while, as they're walking up the stairs, a skull would form in the mirror, which means that they would die before they ever had a chance to be married and meet their husband.
Yeah.
Which
I mean, that's not an entirely ominous thing. That's just that's more like a sad thing.
Yeah, it's more like, so it could be any one of those things. But it has been kind of traced back to, there have been studies done where people have been placed in a room under, I think it was a 25-watt light bulb.
Sure.
So it was a very low lighting. And they were to stare into a mirror for 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. During that time, they many of the participants in this were reporting that their faces were distorting. Sometimes they were seeing faces. Sometimes they were seeing animal faces, demonic faces in the mirror.
I have heard about this. And the description that I heard on it was essentially like after so much time passes, and I mean this may have been a more humor-based website, but essentially your brain gets bored. So it's just like, what can I see here? So it just starts like creating images to entertain itself.
It's actually pretty close. What a lot of folks, because I mean, it's not really understood right now. That's one of the theories. Another one of the theories is that your brain is because the lighting isn't great, and your brain knows it's looking at you, but it doesn't know quite because it's not getting the full picture of you because the lighting's bad, and so it starts trying to fill in the gaps as to like where everything goes.
Sure.
And so sometimes it'll just not fill it in correctly, or it's struggling and misfiring about like what the heck am I looking at, and so you start hallucinating and seeing other things, which is where a lot of this Bloody Mary phenomenon is thought to come from. Is you're already amped up, you're already scared, you're already kind of like you get in there, you say it 3 times, your friends are waiting outside for you, you're trying not to be a wuss about it, and then next thing you know, your brain starts going like, "You bloody woman then."
Is that what you really want to see?
Is that what you want to see? Oh, yeah, here you go. And so that's where a lot of the thought process will come from for it. Although there is another example of a ghost like this called Hanako-san in Japanese folklore. I wasn't able to find a great deal on this that I could really feel comfortable talking about Hanako-san, but it was interesting that we've got these English all the way to American urban legends, and then there's little repeats of it that can be found in different areas of the world as well. But yeah, Bloody Mary as an urban legend, Sam and Dean were pretty much just dealing with their own version of what a Bloody Mary could be, because you've got the violent death at the hands of somebody. In this case, the eyes were gouged out, the eyes were cut out, which fits in with a lot of the urban legends that we see for Bloody Mary. Now, I mean, the only place that it went off the rails, which kind of threw off Sam and Dean, was the fact that Bloody Mary would go after kind of anyone in the vicinity, rather than the person that was saying
that summoned her.
But yeah, because normally she attacks you while you're in the bathroom or wherever you're at.
It's the worst place to be attacked.
I can't imagine I can't imagine any place is really good to be attacked, though.
I think there's just more there because you generally that's a more vulnerable space, because most of the time when you're in the bathroom, you're not in a position to be attacked.
Yeah.
Like if you're walking down the street, you can be attacked and you could be ready to defend yourself.
You can kind of have a headspace for it.
That's why, when I go into the bathroom, I always check behind the shower curtain. And there was a meme that I saw where it was just those that check behind the shower curtain, what are you actually going to do if there's a murderer back there? And I was like, well, I'm not going to get murdered with my pants around my ankles. That's what I'm going to do.
Yep, that's exactly. Glad I'm not the only one who does that. That one's tied into some fear I have about The Shining, though. So I mean, there's that.
You're going to go with Zombieland.
Oh, also a good one. So yeah, and also one thing that I found kind of interesting is we've got Mary Worthington. One of the other phrases that you can say other than Bloody Mary is you can say Mary Worth 3 times, and that's supposed to summon Bloody Mary as well. Where that name comes from, it's just one of many that Bloody Mary can be summoned by.
That is another thing that I liked on especially like the early seasons of Supernatural, is they did put forth a lot of effort into researching what they were doing to like throw in those little tidbits.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm sure they saw that was one of the things that they did, and they're like, well, let's make our victim that died in front of a mirror a Mary Worthington.
Yeah. Rather than just having a direct callback to it being, Mary Worth.
Right, because that's not something that people commonly know.
No.
But for those that have done like research into it, it's kind of a little nod to them, like, we acknowledge that this is a thing.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, there's the one of my, if that I would have to say is the number one episode that I like. 'Cause I got introduced to Supernatural while I was pulling an all-nighter for a college project at one point, and I had that kind of going on in the background, which turned out to be a bad idea because I ended up getting really invested in it. But the best part is after that Bloody Mary episode, I didn't feel like going to bed anyway.
Bonus. So, anything about how to stop her?
Like with a lot of urban legends, there's not really stopping it. It's meant to scare you. It's meant to kind of make you feel a little bit helpless in that way. When you're out telling campfire stories, when you're at a sleepover telling these stories, you're not supposed to be able to win. That's part of the scary part about it.
Right.
You're not. It's like we're going to see later with the Hookman, like we're going to see with a lot of these other urban legends. You're not supposed to be able to walk away as the victor. It's supposed to scare you. As for what Sam and Dean were able to do, I like what you said about the whole Medusa aspect of it. It's like, fight fire with fire, I guess.
And I guess that's part of the growing and the learning of Sam and Dean as hunters. Is just kind of the, this is what we're dealing with, and blinded by the light.
Yep.
Just watching Sam and Dean grow as hunters, they're kind of like, this is what we're dealing with, and this is like the rules that she's following.
Mm-hmm.
She's basically killing people that have led to the death of other people. Well, she's led to the death of other people, so by her logic, she should kill herself.
Yep, absolutely. I think they even make a comment at the very end of that they're like, how did you know that was going to work? And I didn't, or they at least are able to generally acknowledge when they're kind of like, we either wrote ourselves in a corner or we wanted to give something cool, not expected. Because then here later on in the season, we do start to get the normal tropes of salt burning the bones, iron, things like that being able to stop and have an influence on ghosts. So we've got another urban legend in the books.
Yes. I do find it interesting. Like, I never really noticed it when I was first watching through, but how often they bring up salting and burning the bones before they actually do it.
Yep.
Like, there's a lot of, like, everyone's either cremated or they... You know what? Not everybody was cremated. Like, I don't think the woman in white was cremated. They just...
I don't think they touched on it.
They did... Because she was buried, like, at the house, I think. And then before they got a chance to do anything, she just took over the car and was like, you're taking me home.
Yep. Yeah.
And they just had to deal with it. The boy in the water, he drowned, so...
His body was never found.
Yeah. And now we're dealing with this one where she was cremated.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think... But yeah, this is... I don't think we deal with salting and burning the bones until we get to the episode with the painting.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, they kind of deal with it because episode after next is the Hookman, and they deal with the burning of stuff there, but like not the body because it had to be like the
exactly.
thing.
Which, this was the episode that probably scared the crap out of me the most when I first saw this. Hookman is one of my favorites. That's a fun one.
That was one that I was disappointed with at the beginning, but then not by the end.
Yeah.
Because like. We start with this one where they're just like, it's the Bloody Mary legend. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I can see that. Random hunters, they come across like an actual like old school legend, something like this. And then 2 episodes later, they're like, it's the Hookman legend. And I'm like, okay, like spread it out a little bit. But then they were like, no, it's not the Hookman.
Yeah.
It's actually just this deranged priest or whatever the hell it is. I'll have to rewatch the episode.
Spoiler alert.
I guess that's going to conclude this today's episode of Bloody Mary. And so join us next time as we move on from the Bloody Mary episode. And
that's another urban legend in the books for us.
So I guess that's going to do it for today. So until next time, buckle up and
we got work to do.